Jack the Ripper is one of the most interesting crimes I think that's ever happened, because even 127 years later we're still speculating about who was Jack the Ripper, or can we solve the crime. So we've created a museum where you actually can walk through the door and step back in time to 1888 when these terrible crimes happened. For the first time we're telling the story from the perspective of the women, and I think it's a much more powerful and compelling story, because when you move through the museum and you actually learn the stories of the women and you understand their lives and the conditions in which they lived, the terrible poverty and how difficult it was, then when you actually see the murders of those women, it's a much more powerful and emotive way of telling the story. I think one fact that would really surprise visitors is that there's a theory now that Jack the Ripper might actually have been a woman. When you come to our museum, we have all the clues here, we have all the suspects, so you can actually try and solve that mystery for yourself.
Obelisk.
Why people are aggrieved? Well, they haven't been given the chance to discuss this. They haven't been told straight it's going to be a Jack the Ripper museum. Had they been given the opportunity to object, then we could have had that discussion. It would be a lot healthier, would have been out in the open. He needed to really come clean with us and with the council, and then perhaps it would be a different situation.
So I've spent my life, campaigning and fighting for women's rights. There's absolutely no way that I would create a museum that's celebrating Jack the Ripper or is in any way some kind of gore fest. In our planning application we actually had things in there about Jack the Ripper, What we did as we developed the concept and we curated the exhibition was realise that actually a really interesting angle to tell the story from was to take the Jack the Ripper perspective, and for the first time ever to look at it through the eyes of the women who were his victims and also the women of East London. What I want anyone who comes to this museum to feel when they leave here is to have a real understanding of what it was like to be a woman at that time and what terrible conditions they lived in, and actually how lucky we are that those conditions aren't prevalent today.
If he was really serious, would he be selling tat, you know, t-shirts with the Ripper's image and blood all over them? I mean, any woman walking around who's been sexually assaulted and sees something like that, it is so insulting, it is disgusting. Have latte mugs with the Ripper's image on, I mean, how vile.
Our signage is still in the planning stage right now, and the actual title of this museum is Jack the Ripper Museum and the History of Women in East London. We don't actually have that on our frontage yet because we're still working with the council on finishing our signage.